Hello everyone, my name is Bethan and welcome to today's MAST webinar. So the talk is called Linking Voices to Dietary Intake, an interdisciplinary approach to understand the role of fish in food security in a fishing community in Lake Victoria, Kenya. Today our speaker is Alexandra from the University of Stirling. So a couple of housekeeping notes to begin with. After Alex's presentation, we will have a live Q&A session. So if you would like to submit a question, please use the Q&A box that you can see at the bottom of your screen. Questions can be submitted at any point, and we'll work through them after the presentation. So this session is scheduled to end around 1:30 p.m. UK time, but we may go over due to questions. The entire webinar is recorded, so if you miss something or you can't stay for the entire session, or if you want to share it with someone who wasn't able to join, you can find this recording on the MAST YouTube page, along with all of our other previous webinars. So a quick introduction to Alex. Alex is based in the Institute of Aquaculture at the University of Stirling, though she's currently in Australia. Alex's PhD is looking at the effects of declining fisheries on rural nutrition security and livelihoods in the context of emergent aquaculture, with case studies in Bangladesh, Kenya, and Myanmar. Alex has a BSc in Air Systems from Stanford University and an MSc in Sustainable Aquaculture from the University of Stirling. They also have experience in shrimp and tilapia aquaculture and salmon fisheries. Just a reminder, the work Alex is talking about was recently funded by the Saltire Emerging Researchers Scheme, which was a joint collaboration between the Scottish Funding Council and MASTS. So that's enough from me, and I would like to now hand over to today's speaker, Alex.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So hello, my name is Alex, and like introduced, I'm a PhD student at the University of Stirling. Today I'm presenting the methods of my research, and the development of these interdisciplinary methods was supported by Saltire and really made possible by that funding arrangement. So I'm very grateful for that. So more simply put, I'm going to be approaching these methods, which are in a holistic approach to understanding the role of fish in food security. So the study area is Lake Victoria in Kenya, and in many rural communities across the world, fish are a critical source of micronutrients as well as income. Fish provide nutrients that are also highly bioavailable, which means that they're easily absorbed by the human body. With the Saltire funding, the University of Stirling in Scotland and the Institute of Marine Research in Norway partnered up to describe the dynamics of food fish systems and their effects on the micronutrient intake and food security of local fishing communities. We took an interdisciplinary approach to food systems and a sustainable livelihoods approach to understanding the role of fish in these communities' food security. My study area specifically was Sindo, which you can see on the screen here. This is a rural fishing village on the shores of the Kenyan part of Lake Victoria. In the Kenyan part of Lake Victoria, rural fishing communities rely on freshwater fisheries for both their income and food, as in many other places of the world. So this image here particularly is an image of Sindo's beach called Wadianga. And on this beach, fishers pull up their boats onto the beach and then sell their fish to people on the shores. They catch two small silver cyprinids called omena and fulu, also called dagaa in Tanzania. They also catch Nile tilapia, Nile perch, some catfish species, smaller catfish species, and a small freshwater prawn that they locally call ochonga. So as you can see here, you know, the livelihood activities really revolve around fishing in this community for many people. The fish, they're dried, they're smoked, or they're cooked in stews and soups. The fish are sold fresh, but they're also sold processed and transported on trucks and motorcycles to major cities or consumed locally. When we originally conducted scoping activities, these activities revealed that in these communities, omena, one of the small silver cyprinids, is the main and sometimes the only animal source food that people are consuming. Some people around the lake eat omena every day, paired with maize, or ugali, which is a maize-based starch, and perhaps some local wild foraged leafy green vegetables. Both the men and the women rely on these fisheries for income. Men do most of the fishing, but the women are very much involved with the processing, so the drying, and do the cooking and mainly do the cooking for the households. Unfortunately, fishing pressure has increased drastically in the lake. Biomass seems to be stable, but the size of the fish is decreasing and catch per unit effort is decreasing as well. So this increased competition for fish in the lake is suggested to be affecting local livelihoods and food security. And part of my research is looking at that and what's happening at the moment. So our goal was to understand the role of fish in the food security of this rural fishing village, but from multiple perspectives. So really linking the micronutrient intakes to people's voices and experiences. We wanted to know what people were eating, why they were eating it, and also how they felt about eating it. Many people study the role of fish in diets globally, but after systematic literature review, we were unable to find any work like this for communities around Lake Victoria, and very few studies that address this multi-pronged approach exist. But if you've seen any, please do forward on to me. It would be great to connect with those authors. So for the first question, I wanted to look at exactly what foods people were eating and what micronutrients those foods were providing to the people. This would allow us to predict potential micronutrient deficiencies. Particularly, I wanted to explore the micronutrient contribution of fish compared to other foods. So we collected over 300 diet data points using 24-hour recalls of household heads, so both men and women, which are being converted into micronutrient intake as we speak. We also collected an additional 270 24-hour recalls from 90 different families, so 3 members of each family, so we could compare the micronutrient intake differences between the different household members. For those families, we also collected data from the female head of household to calculate a WEA score. The WEA score is an FAO scoring system. It's an acronym for Women's Empowerment in Agriculture, and it's used to measure female autonomy, specifically in rural agricultural economies. So with this data, we're going to be comparing micronutrient intake between fish, between other foods, between genders, between generations, so older people and younger people, better and worse off households. We also took a wealth index, and then also between women with different levels of empowerment. Traditional methods of collecting dietary data generally take a long time. So the interviewer, the enumerator, has to walk through the 24-hour recall process with each respondent, which can take quite a bit of time. So we, and this is how we collected those 300 and 270 different 24-hour recall data. And that took us just over 4 months to do that. Of daily collection. But we wanted to try some different methods to see if we could get some faster data and also provide benefits back to the community in a participatory manner. So we tested running food literacy workshops in primary and secondary schools in the area. And in these workshops, we asked the youths to participate in activity to discuss and then draw food maps of their village. So you can see an image on the screen here of one of the beautiful maps that they drew. And then we also asked them to record their own food intake. For the secondary students, we asked them to do a 2-day diet diary where they wrote down everything they ate for 2 days, including the quantities and ingredients of those foods, so that then we could translate those into micronutrients. For the primary students, we thought that estimating quantities might be a little bit too difficult and not age appropriate. So instead, we asked them to apply their learning on the different food groups and check off what food groups they ate in a day, and to do that over 2 days. And that's allowing us to calculate a dietary diversity score, which is another FAO, standardized FAO indexing tool for understanding quality of diets. So for the second question, and to understand why people were eating what they were eating, I used both qualitative and quantitative methods because food intake can be influenced by a variety of factors. It's not just about the availability of food, it's also about the affordability of that food, and also personal preferences. And this is true for many foods as well as fish. We conducted focus groups of women to explore how they made oh, sorry, I need to change the slide. So in the household survey that I talked about earlier, where we took 24-hour recalls, that was where we had over 100 responses, we asked about market prices and price elasticity. So what is the highest price you've paid for this food item? And what is the lowest price you've paid for this food item? What do you normally pay for this food item? And then we asked about those specifically for the most commonly consumed fish, and collected data for a sustainable livelihoods analysis. So that includes factors like the percent of income spent on food, the percent of income spent on fish, main income generating activities, etc. We also conducted focus groups of women to explore how they made choices about what to eat, and what to provide their households with, what to cook for their households, and when, and whether that changed with seasons or with different factors like holidays or shortages of money, of income. We chose women because in the scoping activities that we did, we found that they were the ones making most of the food decisions for the household. So it was very rare to find a man that cooked for the household. So we examined their food literacy and knowledge of nutrition, knowledge of food, diverse diets, a balanced diet, and asked about what they thought about the affordability of different foods and their household preferences. We also asked them about common recipes and traditional food pairings. For the final question, I also took a mixed method approach and examined how people felt about what they were eating. Even if people are eating a healthy diet that is quantitatively diverse, not having choices or feeling restricted in their choices can negatively affect a person's experiential well-being. So how people perceive and feel about their food is important to understanding food security generally. In the household questionnaires, we included the Food Insecurity Access Scale. It's another FAO tool that's been validated in Kenya and around Lake Victoria specifically for understanding perceived food insecurity of individuals in these rural agricultural economies. In the focus groups with women, we also discussed their feelings and experiences and how they felt about their food choices. It came up, we're still doing the analysis on all this, but it came up a lot that people really were sick of eating omena. There were some women who had it every day because they couldn't afford any other protein source. And it was a very strong negative emotional response to that. The Saltire funding was absolutely critical for developing the partnerships required to make this research holistic. The University of Stirling partnered with the Institute of Marine Research in Norway. Marion is an expert in micronutrient analysis of fish and is supporting a lot of the micronutrient assessment as part of this research. And she has quite a lot of experience in small pelagic fisheries. Excuse me. And then my own supervisor, Professor Dave Little, has a lot of experience with food fish systems and livelihood analysis across the globe. So those two different perspectives were brought together in this. We developed these methods together, which enabled us to secure further funding for this research from the KTN, which is a GCRF funding body. This will be the basis, this data will be the basis of my PhD. We're currently analyzing it, so I'm hoping to give another presentation in a few months' time that presents the results of this work. And if you would like a link to that presentation, please do feel free to contact me so that I can forward you a link to that once it's ready. The partnership with Marion and the Institute of Marine Research is ongoing and has now developed wheels. We have plans for co-supervising MSc student projects and BSc student projects together in the next year. And we have several publications already in a draft format for co-publishing. I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening. My email and WhatsApp number are on the screen, and the website describing the Saltire project and its outcomes, the link is listed on the screen there. I welcome any questions or comments that you have on this. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was a very interesting talk. Just a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to submit a question, then please use the Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And as we wait for questions to come in, I would actually like to ask Alex, so how much of the micronutrient data that you needed could you get from the literature versus how much did you have to kind of record and find and analyze yourself?
Yeah, great question. So there is this absolutely fantastic database, which I'm sure many of you already heard of, called FishBase. And it was an initiative that collated all of the micronutrient composition data available in the literature for fish specifically. It lists the fish scientific name, the common name in the various countries that it's commonly found in. And it's a really useful tool for getting that micronutrient data. I did a similar project about 5 years ago and spent months filtering through the literature trying to find micronutrient data for the analysis. So this FishBase platform has really, I mean, now it took me days. Some of the fish in Lake Victoria are only found in Lake Victoria and weren't actually present in the FishBase database. For all of the most commonly consumed fish, so the ones I mentioned earlier, omena, catfish, Nile perch, Nile tilapia, I'm going to be doing the micronutrient analysis myself and then comparing that to the information that is available in FishBase. So FishBase does have Nile perch and Nile tilapia. But what's also interesting is that we see the micronutrient composition of tilapia varies significantly based on where it's being cultured or where it's being grown. So we see across the saline zone in Bangladesh, for example, that tilapia that are grown or that are caught near the ocean have much higher omega-3 fatty acid values than those found in fresher water areas. And because tilapia are quite a sturdy fish, they can be found in lots of different conditions. So we're going to compare those and move forward that way.
Thank you. Just a reminder, everyone, you can submit your questions below. I actually have another question, if that's okay, Alex. So you mentioned Lake Victoria. Have you done any other projects in this area?
Yeah, in Lake Victoria, we're also partnering with a company called Womega. And Womega is a startup that are looking at value adding ochunga. And ochunga are those small freshwater prawns that I showed a picture of earlier in the presentation. Currently, no one's eating those freshwater prawns. So if you go to Ghana, you go to Nigeria, they make this absolutely fantastically delicious fermented shrimp paste with chilies and garlic and onion, and it's really delicious. But in Kenya and around Lake Victoria, people don't eat it. They see it kind of as an insect, as something that, oh no, I'm not going to eat that, right? There's a repulsion to it. And it's very, very cheap. You can get 5 kilos of it for less than a pound. So often this is just used as chicken feed. And so local aquaculture companies are starting to look at this freshwater resource as an aquafeed ingredient. We know that aquaculture generally across the globe is criticized for removing fisheries that could go to direct human consumption and moving them into aquafeeds. And that's certainly something that we don't want to see happening in Lake Victoria. So I've partnered with Womega, and we're trialing 2 different palatability studies, one with infants where we're adding the ground achonga into infant porridge as a supplement. It's very rich in calcium and proteins and fatty acids, just to see if the kids will eat it. So we'll be recording their facial expressions and whether or not they'll take another bite and whether or not they spit out the formula. We're also partnering with the Kenya Methodist University Nutrition Department to do those activities. We're also partnering with a company called Victory Farms, which is the largest tilapia, it's the largest largest aquaculture company in East Africa, producing 10,000 tons of fish annually. And they're particularly interested in potentially using this as an aquafeed ingredient. So we've been running palatability trials with some of their broodstock and fry to see if we can compare the performance of an achonga diet compared to a pelleted diet. And based on the results of those 2 things, we can make a recommendation on the best use of this freshwater resource.
Thank you. Lots of things going on at the moment for you, seems. So I don't think we have any questions submitted. So if you'd like to maybe ask a question to Alex personally, then please send her an email. I'm sure she'd be happy to receive those. And just as a reminder, post a MASTS webinar every second Wednesday. So the next one will be we'll be joined by Emily Haig, and she'll be talking about the Scottish Vessel Project. Information will be circulated in the MASTS emails and on the MASTS Twitter account. Thank you so much for attending this talk, and thank you again to our speaker, Alex. It's been very interesting and informative. We really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting. Bye.